Call this planning commission to order, please. Everyone sit down and be quiet, please. I need to call this planning commission to order. Charlie? May I have a roll call? Oh, first of all, today is Wednesday, February the 22nd. May I have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Amanda Denmark.
Here.
Vice Chairman Charlie Wetmore.
Here.
Commissioner Kathleen Duncan.
Here.
Commissioner Rich Delcor.
Here.
Commissioner Jason Stewart. Commissioner Jim Flynn. Commissioner Lydia DePaul.
Here. Okay. A notice regarding adjournment. The the Planning Commission will not hear new items after 9:30 unless authorized by a majority vote of the commission members present. Items which have not been heard before 9:30 may be continued to the next regular meeting or an additional meeting date as determined by the commission members. Notice regarding public comments. Every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall address the chairman and speaking avoid disrespect to the board and the commission, town staff, and other members of the meeting. Please state your name and address for the record, and your comments are limited to 3 minutes. May I have an adoption of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. May I have an adoption of the minutes?
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, public comments that are not on the agenda. Do we have any of those?
For items not on the agenda, we do not.
But we do have items for the agenda, which will wait until that item is heard. Okay? Do we have any old business? Nope. And so we'll start with our new business, Pinellas Drive offices, a request by Jared Thompson of Moore Civil Consulting on behalf of the property owner Ken Toski for approval of preliminary development plan. Okay, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a preliminary development plan for Pinellas Drive offices. It's a request by Jared Thompson of Moore Civil Consulting on behalf of the property owner Ken Toski for approval of a preliminary development plan application for the construction of 3 office buildings totaling 12,600 square feet. The 1.5 acre property zone Buckwalter PUD, and it's located on Buckwalter Commons Phase 1 Master Plan. Here is the Bluffton Explorer project location map off of Pinellas Drive, which is off of Buckwalter Parkway. This is an aerial showing the same location. Property zone Buckwalter PUD consists of approximately 1.5 acres located at 1841 Pinellas Drive. It is in parcel C2 of the Buckwalter Commons Phase 1 Master Plan. Project consists of construction of 3 office buildings totaling 12,600 square feet and the associated driveways, parking areas, and bioretention areas. 45 parking spaces are required, and the site plan shows 60 parking spaces. Staff comments on the preliminary development plan were reviewed at the January 4, 2023 meeting of the DRC. On January 25th, the applicant provided a response to comments and updated the site plans updated the site plans to address the comments provided. This is the site plan. I've got a zoomed up version of it here. This is off of Pinellas Drive. We have dumpster locations in 2 spots. We have an internal sidewalk system. We've got 2 4,500 square foot office buildings, and then 1 office building at 3,600 square feet. You enter off of directly across the street from it is Zips Car Wash. If you're familiar with that, this is the Parker's gas station. Review criteria 1 through 6. Planning Commission has the authority to take the following action: approve the application as submitted by the applicant, approve the application with conditions, table the application, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. Should the Planning Commission choose to approve the application with conditions, town staff finds following conditions should be met: prior to final development plan approval to be in accordance with the requirements of section 310.3A, and that is just to provide a minimum width of 5 feet for all sidewalks. They're showing 3 feet for the internal sidewalks. And I'll open up for any questions you may have.
I think the property owner is here. Yes, sir.
Does anyone have any questions for Dan before we move on to the property owner? Yeah. Does the applicant want to speak?
Thank you.
All right. Anyone have any comments? Motions? Suggestions? Kathleen?
Do they have room, I can see where there's gonna be a shift. If they make that sidewalk 5 foot, they're gonna be reducing that plant bed to 8 unless they push that whole thing forward to the street. But it looks like they may still have room for that. Am I correct in that?
Well, two things here. One is at preliminary, when we met with them for pre-application, we told them you had to have 8 feet of building foundation. You do not. That's only in the highway corridor overlay. So they definitely can take 2 feet out of that 8 feet, still have a decent planting bed, and provide the 5 foot sidewalk.
And there's no preliminary planting plan, is that correct?
No, it's not required at this. The final planting plan will be provided at final development plan submittal.
Who's the authority for architectural design there? Who's the POA there, or is there one? I see Ken laughing.
It's so convoluted. It's the movie theater. It all fell into that PUD for the Buckwalter movie theater, and I can't recall the fellow's name, but when Buckwalter Pinellas Drive came on, they're creating their own, but it falls under that. So we've met the guidelines with building and structures as far as what they were looking for in there. So all that's been done.
And you'll have to provide a letter to that effect, obviously. Question for you, I don't see a parking table on here. If that, I'm sure it's there, I'm just not.
It is. I had a zoomed up version of it, but it is in the upper left of the site plan that's shown.
The only question I have.
Talk into your mic.
I can hear me.
Not everybody can.
Especially not people watching.
That's right.
Yeah. The question would be that building that on this slide that you have up, that's all the way over to the right, has a 30 by 36 patio on it. If that were changed to restaurant use, how does that affect the parking calculations? I'm sure it will, but within. I mean, this is just occurring to me now. I would have asked you before this if I could.
We've already addressed that. The parking is addressed to that restaurant space. That end unit will be a restaurant, and that patio will be a part of that fixture.
Okay, and then staff, if we could, just because it's labeled as office, let's make sure that those parking calculations match for it being a restaurant. Otherwise, you're going to come back before us
Understood.
to redo it all.
Understood.
And you're referring to the third bay.
What that patio is.
1,500 square feet.
I just saw that patio, and a patio that size is usually a restaurant, so. Because I'm not, again, I just looking through quick as I saw this and I was thinking about this again, I'm not seeing the parking table, just want to make sure. I think it's 4-1 in Buckwalter.
Right.
Yeah.
Will that patio be used for dining? Will that have to work into the calculation?
Yeah, that's what he wants to make sure.
In addition to the building itself?
Yeah.
Yes.
Will it be a nice restaurant?
You'll be surprised.
Okay, with that, is there any other comments, questions? If not,
Is there public comment on this one?
Thank you.
with that, does anyone want to make a motion?
I will.
Okay.
I move are we approving or recommending for approving? We're approving here.
Approving.
Okay. I recommend we approve with the condition that, 2 conditions. One, that the sidewalks be a minimum width of 5 feet in the entire project. And number 2, that the applicant work with staff on the proposed use of the restaurant. Just make sure that the parking calculations match at time of final.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Compass Self-Storage Development Plan Application, requested by Jonathan Steele of Compass on behalf of the property owner Marilyn Faulkner for approval of a preliminary development plan application. Do we have any public comment on this one? Dan?
Thank you. This is a preliminary development plan for Compass Self-Storage. It's a request by Jonathan Steele of Compass TPC LLC on behalf of the property owner Marilyn Faulkner of MFF Enterprises LLC for approval of a preliminary development plan application for two-story climate-controlled storage buildings totaling 113,544 square feet. The 3.21 acre property is zoned Jones Estate PUD and is located at the intersection of Gibbet Road and Highway 170 within the Palmetto Point Commercial Master Plan. This is the location of the subject property. This is an aerial view showing the location of the subject property. The application is for a preliminary development plan located in Jones Estate PUD, subject to the standards set forth in the Jones Estate PUD Development Agreement and Concept Plans and the Palmetto Point Commercial Master Plan. The project consists of two-story climate-controlled storage buildings totaling 113,544 square feet and also including a retail sales rental office. Site will not be used for truck rentals. However, on occasion, a rental truck may be parked on site between rentals. And staff comments for the preliminary development plan were reviewed on November 2nd, 2022 DRC meeting. Since the applicant's resubmittal reflected a major change from the original site plan, they went from one building to two buildings. We took them back to DRC for a second time, and that was on January 11th, 2023. The proposed development requires that a certificate of appropriateness highway corridor overlay be submitted examining landscaping, lighting, and architecture. That means you guys will see it again when it comes through for that. This is the site plan. I've blown it up a little bit here, hard to see. So it is two separate buildings, two-story, climate controlled. It's access off of this road. This is a State Boulevard. This is the pickleball site to the south of it. So the circulation is up through here and comes back out. The loading areas and the entrance areas are shown here. I believe this is the office area, and they provided the adequate parking. There's a gravel drive right here that's emergency access only for fire trucks. In case of a fire, they're able to access the back of the building. There's a buffer along Highway SC-170, Ocoee Highway, right here. We're asking as part of this submission that a sidewalk be built along the perimeter and running up to the property line on Gibbet Road. It'll come short of the intersection to the north, but that's off their site. Planning Commission will consider the criteria set forth in Section 310.3A. This is the criteria. Planning Commission has the authority to take the following action: approve the application as submitted, approve the application with conditions, table the application, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. Staff finds that the requirements of Section 310.3A of the Unified Development Ordinance is met and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the application as submitted.
Anyone have any questions for Dan before we move on?
And I know the applicant, Jonathan Steele, is here.
Would you like to speak?
Board Ed and Dan laid it out very well. So I'll just answer questions if you have.
What was your name again?
Jonathan Steele.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Dan or Jonathan?
Yeah, I do have a comment for you, Mr. Steele. With the project that's going in next door, the 25 pickleball courts.
Yes.
They are going to have a drop-off on Kame Drive. And there is the potential where you can see the parking up towards the top, toward your building that's closest to 170. I strongly suggest you think through, you're going to have partially gated access, I assume?
We are.
Okay. Your parking spaces for the office, I wouldn't be surprised to see people next door try and use. So just mentioning, you might want to think through proper signage or how and where those gates go.
Okay.
For your own benefit.
I can point out where we are looking at having the gate right now. I don't know if this.
Helpful.
Big picture. Oh, okay. Hold that button. So the intent is to have a gate right here, and then the other one will be at the back here. So the office parking in the front of the office, this is the office here, and so we'll have this as the office parking.
Right.
And the rest of it will be gated and secured.
And by no means am I telling you what to do.
Right.
If it were my property, I would have signs on each parking spot that say, come to self-storage office parking only.
Okay.
Or something to that effect.
Yes.
We're just trying to.
Predicting the future.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just trying to take care of neighbors so
Right.
that there are no issues.
Yeah.
So that thought occurred to us while we were
Okay.
going through it.
Any further?
Just a comment, I appreciate you adjusting this to save the number of trees we're saving. Thank you.
Nope. Kathleen, do you have anything? Anyone want to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we, Dan, could you put that up again, please? Sorry. Thank you.
That's it.
So I move that we accept and approve the application as submitted for the Compass development.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And that's the most storage units we can build in the town, right?
Okay, item number 3, Buckwalter Place, Lot 100, a development plan, a request by Dan Kiefer on behalf of property owner Jazz Development for an approval of a preliminary development plan application. Yeah, he's back there.
Preliminary development plan for Buckwalter Place, Lot 100. A request by Dan Kiefer of Whitmer Jones Kiefer on behalf of the property owner Jazz Development LLC for approval of a preliminary development plan application for construction of 2 mixed-use buildings totaling 15,100 square feet. The 1.5 acre property is zoned Buckwalter PUD and it's located within the Buckwalter Place master plan. This is the location of the property, right at the roundabout within Buckwalter Place. It's the southeast corner of it. This is an aerial of the same location. The application for a preliminary development plan located within Buckwalter PUD, subject to the standards set forth in the Buckwalter PUD Development Agreement and Concept Plan and the Buckwalter Place Master Plan. Project proposes the construction of 2 mixed-use buildings totaling 15,100 square feet. Building A includes a 1,500 square foot restaurant and plus or minus 5,100 square feet of retail space. Building B includes 7,000 square foot 2-story office space and a 1,500 square foot single-story office space. Total of 86 parking spaces are required, and the site plan provides for 87 parking spaces. Staff comments on the preliminary development plan were reviewed at the November 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Development Review Committee. On January 27th, the applicant provided a response to comments and updated the site development plans to address comments provided. Here is the site plan. Here's a blown up view of it. It is adjacent to the Publix grocery store parking. Below it is where the mini golf is currently being constructed. So there's a road here and a road here. They are providing underground detention as well as stormwater detention on this corner. They provide parking when you first come in. There's a row of parking that is access off of this road. The rest of them are internal. There's a sidewalk system that runs up here, wraps around, and comes back out here so that the folks in the parking lot here can access the sidewalk. I believe it's 2 additional parking spaces that count towards the development are along here. Planning Commission shall consider the criteria set forth in section 310.3A of the Unified Development Ordinance in assessing an application for a preliminary development plan. These are the criteria. Planning Commission has the authority to approve the application as submitted, approve the application with conditions, table the application, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. Town staff finds that the requirements of section 310.3A of the Unified Development Ordinance is met and recommends Planning Commission approve the application as submitted. And I can return to the site plan and answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Dan, or would you like for the
applicant is here.
Or the applicant?
The applicant, yeah.
Comments on this one or
Do
no?
we have any public comments on this one? Dan Kiefer, would you like to
Dan
speak?
Kiefer, Whitmer Jones Kiefer, and Mr. David Oliver is here, the applicant, and Ryan Lyle on stormwater engineering. So here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Don't go too far, Dan.
Dan, we got some questions.
I've got two things that personally, I've got 2 things that personally are a challenge to me on this plan. I like it overall, but if we would look, and Dan, you might have to help with the pointer. Down on the south end of the property, there's a sidewalk that I know town staff talked to you about putting there. We need a crosswalk there as well, because you're going to have people that are going back and forth between the shops, potentially, between the mini golf, potentially. So that needs to be, in my opinion, commission.
Is that the location you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, straight crosswalk.
Yeah, striped crosswalk, probably one of those classic things that says state law, you must stop, that cars run over, those things. The more immediate concern that I have is, Dan, and I know because I've talked to you about this, or we talked about it, the parking spots on the north end of the property, the first 2 spots specifically, if you pull into those first 2 spots and you go to back out, you literally have to look 4 directions to try and back out. That is unsafe. So those 2 spots either need to go away, or potentially, and I think this is kind of a staff thing, make them diagonal spots there so that when you're backing back out, you're only dealing with traffic coming from one particular space.
Sure, yeah, honestly.
Talking about?
Yeah, because we looked at it. You can't see it on this map, but across the street where the park is, there are angled spaces, and we looked at that spacing, and we sort of went back and forth on it, but because of the 90-degree parking as you come down. But if we can work with staff on that, I think we have 1 extra space, and I'm sure we could find 1 more, but we could work with staff on that to look at the angled option.
And you understand why that concerns me, just because, I mean, a lot of traffic there, myself included, I live near there.
Yeah.
I don't go out, matter of fact, Rich and I were talking about this. Somebody up here owns a Corvette, and it's a hard time getting out of Corvette.
Yeah, if you're on that bottom road and you're trying to get out, it's almost impossible because you got cars parked along that spot where you just talked about cars parking and cars parking for Station 300, and that's difficult enough. When you go up to the northern spot that Charlie's talking about, you really could have people whipping in from the Buckwalter Place Boulevard, coming out of the Publix lot, going down this road. I think it's just an accident waiting for it to happen. So yeah, if there's some way you could do an angle thing, and find the extra parking spots, because I know the angles take up a little bit more room, that would be a good compromise.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
And could building A shift if it had to, just to help you with the angle? Could it shift over a little bit?
Yes, yes.
Can I get clarification on the line that's set back from the property line, that it's also typical property line type that goes through building A? Is that a setback? What is that?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier today. It was a line that was it's an extra line. It's a right of way. It's not a required setback. There's an extra line on there.
Okay,
I clarified with Dan today.
thank you. It's like,
Does that come off?
Doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone want to make a motion?
I can make a motion that we approve this applicant's submission with the condition that they find a way to mitigate the concern that we have about the parking in the north side of the lot.
And the crosswalk.
And add, thank you, and add the crosswalk that we talked about.
Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So sit right there, Dan Kiefer. Or do you like the next two?
I'll take it for the next one.
Okay.
morning, so nice.
Okay, the part, number 4, the Parkways Office at Hampton Lake. A request by Caleb King of Whitmer James Kiefer on behalf of the property owner, University Investments, for approval of a preliminary development plan.
Okay, thank you. This is a preliminary development plan for the Parkways office. Request by Caleb King of Whitmer Jones Kiefer on behalf of the property owner, University Investments LLC, for approval of a preliminary development plan. The project proposes the construction of 3 flex space buildings totaling 27,000 square feet. The 5.31 acre property is zoned Buckwalter PUD. It's located on the southeast corner of the intersection of Bluffton Parkway and Hampton Parkway. The western portion of the subject property is within the Brightwater of Hampton Lake Master Plan, and the eastern portion of the subject property is within the Hampton Lake Master Plan. This is an aerial photo showing the location of the subject property. Same subject property as it's shown in our Bluffton Explorer web application. The application is for preliminary development plan located within Buckwalter PUD and is subject to the standards set forth in the Buckwalter PUD Development Agreement and Concept Plan, the Brightwater at Hampton Lakes Master Plan, and the Hampton Lakes Master Plan as applicable. Project proposes the construction of 2 3-story buildings totaling 10,000 square feet each, 1 2-story building totaling 7,000 square feet, and the associated access, parking, and utilities to serve the buildings. A total of 121 parking spaces are required, and the site plan provides 120 parking spaces. The applicant will provide additional parking space at time of final development plan submittal. Staff comments on the preliminary development plan were reviewed at the November 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Design Review Committee. On January 27th, 2023, the applicant provided a response to comments and updated the site development plans to address the comments provided. This is the site plan showing the whole property and Bluffton Parkway to the north. This is a zoomed up version just showing the developed area. Permeable parking is in the back. They're proposing to phase it where they will build everything except this building. So all of the infrastructure, all of the parking, and these 2 buildings would be built with an initial phase, and the second phase will come in with just this building and the tie-ins to the utilities. We've got detention across the front, and to the east is a stormwater pond. Planning Commission shall consider the criteria set forth in section 310.3A of the UDO in assessing an application for a preliminary development plan. These are the criteria. Planning Commission has the authority to take the following action. They may approve the application as submitted by the applicant, approve the application with conditions, table the application, or deny the application as submitted by the applicant. Should the Planning Commission choose to approve the application with conditions, town staff finds that the following conditions should be met prior to final development plan approval to be in accordance with requirements of section 310.3A. And that is the proposed flex space development will be limited to 2,000 square feet of restaurant use, 6,000 square feet of retail use, and 19,000 square feet of office use. This is the combination of those uses that works out with the parking, and this was, the applicant was the one that provided these square footages. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and the applicant is here.
Do we have any public comment on this one? Anybody have questions for Dan before we open it up?
Clarification, Dan, the applicant's response to item 12 on their sheet where they said that no tree mitigation is required outside of HCOD. It isn't in HCOD, but there is tree mitigation required. Can you just update us as a commission as to what that is?
It is 15 trees per acre is what they'll be required to provide. Is that correct, Jordan? Yeah.
Is there a size on the trees?
Minimum 2.5 inch caliber. 12 feet.
I have a question. I'm a little confused. I see their parking calculations on their plan, and then which show 123 parking spaces provided. You indicated they provided 120, and they need 121. So I'm seeing some inconsistencies. Can you talk to me about where that's coming from?
Where the parking's coming from?
Well, why am I seeing inconsistencies and what's happening?
They showed, I think they showed 123, but they were counting the golf cart spaces.
Okay, gotcha.
And they can't count golf cart spaces outside of their historic district.
And then, are they required to, well, I suppose they're probably not required, are they required to connect that walkway up to that Hampton Lake Drive sidewalk in any way? It's on one side next to the circle, but where the main drive is, the asphalt drive.
You're not talking about the boardwalk.
No, I'm talking about at the main
Yellow
entrance to
sidewalk.
this. Yeah, the yellow walk. It's connected by the circle, but it's not connected by the drive. So basically,
You can only get in it one way.
if you're coming in from Hampton Lake, you're going to come up to this asphalt drive and then walk up the drive where all the cars are. So it's a bit of a pedestrian vehicular conflict issue. If you're walking.
Maybe we'll let the applicant
Yeah.
speak to that.
The question was whether it was required. I'm assuming it's not to have that. Okay.
And
It would be a good idea as somebody who walks by there multiple times a week to have a sidewalk along that main drive.
And then the one more question for Dan before we, and I want to hear that. I just want to make sure I got from Dan what I got. The dumpster is sitting underneath that power line. Is this? I'm concerned you can't have trees that get larger than like 12 feet under the power line, but we've got a dumpster that they can pick up and dump into a dump truck.
Honestly, I've never thought of that, but I think they can site their dumpster where they have it, but it can sit under the power lines.
It can sit under the power line. Okay.
Caleb King, Whitmer Jones Kiefer. The dumpster location is probably going to go away in favor of rollouts. As we discussed with the applicant previously. If we do end up with a dumpster, we'll address that then.
so if it's a rollout, where are they rolling out?
We would take out like service yard type areas out of those patios between the buildings.
And so does that mean a dump, well, help me understand how the trash happens.
Yeah, we're not sure of the final uses yet, so we're not sure how much trash we'd have.
But is it something, I guess the dumpster would come and get it?
We would have a loading zone in front.
So if there's a loading zone, then does that mess with your parking?
It potentially could. we've got room to wiggle some of the parking here and there.
Brian Whitmer with James Keeper. We would, that's a detail we'll work through with staff if we just started to look at moving the trash. So we know if we do that, we'll probably have to adjust that. So we'll work that through to make sure we'll be able to get it out. And the dumpster could be under the power line easement as long as it's 50 feet away from a power pole, because it wouldn't, that isn't the, wouldn't be a clearance issue just for that.
It's part of final require a letter from utility.
Right. So we're going to work through trash because we may move it, but if we move it, we still got to get our park.
And just as a note, you're going to need a dumpster if you have a restaurant in there.
There's a good possibility that it really depends on, if it's a small restaurant, more of a coffee shop, it may not, but obviously that user may want it. So we know when we work through this, we got to figure out how and where trash works.
So, and then back to the walkway, did you look, I mean, it looks like there's enough room to include a walkway. There is a reason that we did not connect the interior walkway to that, along that front drive, that entrance.
Yes, there is room. We opted to go for the connection at the existing, where the sidewalk connects across the street.
Which way are you referring to?
Down by the circle.
Down the circle, that one.
There's a sidewalk directly across from that.
You're talking about this connection?
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't know that, since it's not required, I obviously can't ask you to put it in there, but I'd strongly encourage, just given, the community.
See what we can do. The civil engineer start, the grading got tied in there on us when we started to look at that, so that's part of why it's not there now. But I think we can explore it and see if we can.
I thank you for pointing that out, because that was a good point. I mean, you're going to have 250 apartments to the east of that. You already have 250 apartments to the west, and then you have 1,350 homes behind it. So if you have that second sidewalk, you'll probably end up with a beaten path if you don't have the sidewalk.
Yeah, as Charlie, Commissioner Wetmore suggested, there's a lot of people moving in and out of here, and I don't know if there's any way for you to mitigate the construction traffic. That happens to be a main entrance for both the Benton House as well as Hampton Lake with lots of residents. The construction during this period of time is going to probably wrap that up pretty significantly. I don't know if there's any other access that you could provide during construction, just a consideration for you to think about. Yeah.
The only option for construction.
We're landlocked by wetland constraints.
And then there was a question I had. The initial plan, the fire department said that there needed to be aerial access to the buildings for fire, and I didn't note that was on this one. That'll be addressed at time of final, right?
It will, and the fire marshal has an opportunity to comment again, but we reached out when they resubmitted, and Dan Wiltsey, the fire marshal, said he was okay with it, no comments. So whatever, he wasn't happy with the first time, he was happy with the second time. I think it's apparatus and height lines.
As long as staff works that through with him and you're comfortable with his answer, I'm comfortable with it. I just, it was there and now it's not. And
Right, no. That's why we included the ARC comments in the staff report, so you guys have an opportunity to look more.
The other thing I see on the plan, in those back to the parking calculations, it's an average based off of office and retail. I don't see the restaurant listed on this plan that I'm looking at. So, one, typically, and I understand why we're doing an average, because you don't know what is being specifically used for what, but typically you base it off the actual use itself, from my experience, per the square footage for the use. And because restaurant is such a intensive use, that's an important part of that calculation. So that's why I'm wanting to make sure staff that you work with.
Yeah.
Staff
No, they did. I reached out to them, and it was called out as 3 buildings flex space, and we said, well, we can't figure out the parking that's required based on flex space, so what would be the uses? And they responded back with the actual square footages that met the amount of parking that they're requiring, and that's what's included as our staff conditions.
So there is a staff I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yes,
I
no,
didn't.
yeah,
There's staff conditions that they have to meet.
right there.
Okay, thank you. You did say that. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
What is the requirement in that PUD? Do you know off the top of your head? Is it 4 per 1,000 square feet?
It's 3.5 for office,
5 for retail.
5 for retail, and restaurant is 12.
Okay.
So I'm going back to the parking. Assuming they meet these percentage or square footage, they will meet their parking calculations. Is that correct?
Right, and there's even flexibility there if they want. I mean, the restaurant use is the one that gets them. If they were to have a bigger restaurant, they probably wouldn't meet the parking. But I think they can have a little flexibility between retail and office.
Okay.
The way the buildings are set up, it looks like retail is first floor. It's kind of the ideal.
Most likely, yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the application with the condition noted by staff.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, so we're on item number 5, Alston Park Phase 3, initial master plan, a request by Dan Keeper on behalf of Village Park Communities for approval of a master plan. There are public comments on this one, correct? Okay, so we will listen to those after we have our presentations and questions. Dan, if we could start.
Thank you. Alston Park Phase 3 initial master plan. This is the location. It sits between the Haven development to the south and Alston Park Phase 1 and 2 is to the north. This is not a master plan that's part of the Alston Park Phase 1 and 2. It's its own initial master plan. This is the location of property. Alston Park Phase 3 will be developed in accordance with the new Riverside concept plan. Final location of roads, lagoons, and amenities may vary based on market conditions and tree save opportunities. Here, if they were to come back in with a development plan that dramatically, that looked a whole lot different than what we're considering tonight, we would take it back to Planning Commission as a new master plan. But the reason we comment on that is because there may be opportunities to shift lot lines and alignments and save trees. So what we're doing is recognizing that this is conceptual in nature. Holly Hill Lane, and I'll show you the location of that on the next slide. It will be constructed as part of the first phase, and there's a maximum of 76 single-family dwelling units being proposed here, and they have those development rights. Site design, architectural guidelines, and restrictive covenants will set the standards for design and construction materials. Per the New Riverside PUD, development will meet or exceed the zoning development standard ordinance, ZDSO, in place in 2004. That's consistent with the New Riverside concept plan PUD. Based on current market conditions, the master plan indicates a plus or minus 70-foot by 120-foot lot sizes, and that would be with a 15-foot front, 10-foot rear, and 5-foot side yards on each typical lot. Streets will be privately owned. There was an overall traffic impact analysis that was done originally with the New Riverside master developer commissioning the traffic study. At that time, the units that were shown here were included in that original traffic report. In addition to that, There was an updated traffic impact analysis that was done by Kimberly Horn and was included with this initial master plan submittal. One of the findings out of it was as you come down New Riverside Drive, entering into what's going to be built as Holly Hill Lane. I'll jump to here to better show it. It's actually 2 lanes coming southward on New Riverside Drive. The result of the traffic study said that a deceleration lane, an additional lane for a dedicated left turn lane coming out of here to enter into Holly Hill Lane would not be required. And that's mostly based upon the fact that there's 2 lanes going south. And so cars won't be disrupted by left turns coming into Holly Hill Lane, entering into the subdivision. This is a same thing, the initial master plan, just kind of zoomed in. Holly Hill Lane is not built right now. There is a break in the median on New Riverside Drive. This would be built as part of phase 1. They are proposing to build the whole thing as a single phase, but they also mentioned in their submittal booklet that may change based upon market conditions. This is a 50-foot right of way. It would be 24 feet of pavement. It would have to build it all the way to this connection. This is Benton Circle that leads this road. Right now, if you're in Alston Park up here, you can't get down to Holly Hill Lane. There is no Holly Hill Lane. So actual off-site development would also include a connection to this Benton Circle. So they'd have to build all of Holly Lane and this connection here as part of the first phase. That would also serve as the dedicated construction road for the development. They note that they're leaving open the option of whether to gate the community or not. That's up to the developer, the owner. And if they do, they provided a little turnaround roundabout. If they have gated access, I think they're considering maybe having those gates as closed only in the evening. There's an amenity area here. That's also where the mail kiosk is. I believe they're talking about a sports court, maybe a pickleball court in that area. They've got multiple greens. The next slide looks similar, but what it's showing here is the trails and open space that's being proposed. They are proposing a greenway. Through the middle of this greenway would be made up of a 4-foot wide mulch path that would, my color blindness is kicking in here, so it gets out here, but I'm not sure how far it travels down in this direction. but they also, the squared is the sidewalk, and they're showing sidewalk getting out to, we have an existing New Riverside Trail right here. We require that they do a pedestrian connection to that. The way they're showing it now would show a connection that is on their property and gets out to the trail. Part of the agreement with the county park that's off to the west is that the park is responsible for building this road and an 8-foot asphalt path. Since this development is coming in first and we're asking them to build an asphalt road, what we're wanting them to do is take their internal circulation, take it out to Holly Hill Lane, and then also build this section of the 8-foot asphalt path as part of their development. So the remainder of that asphalt path that would sit on the south side of Holly Hill Lane would be the responsibility of the county park, along with the road from this intersection westward. They are showing that this is their road cross-section, 50-foot cross-section with 24 feet of roadway, paved asphalt, 5-foot sidewalk only on one side, one street tree per lot. That may fluctuate depending on where their light poles are and any conflicts they may have, but they're in their submittal, they said they will attempt to provide one tree per lot. They're going to have a 20-foot setback for garages, 15-foot setback for the homes. That allows for parking, two car width parking in the driveway that doesn't impede on the sidewalk, as well as a 2-car garage. So that's 4 parking spaces per house. We require 2 parking spaces per house. There's no on-street parking with this development being proposed. This is a review criteria 1 through 8. This is different than the first 4 criteria you saw. This is specific to a master plan. This pre-application meeting took place back in March of 2022. We had a check-in April 6, 2022. It was reviewed by the Design Review Committee on May 11th of 2022. And then the Planning Commission recommendation is tonight. This goes on to council. You're only making a recommendation to town council for this application. And then the council date is to be determined. Planning Commission can recommend approval of the application as submitted. They can recommend approval of the application with conditions, or they can recommend denial of the application as submitted by the applicant. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Town staff finds that the requirements of section 393 of the Unified Development Ordinance can be met with the following conditions, and recommends the Planning Commission provide a recommendation of approval to Town Council for the Austin Park Phase 3 initial master plan, including the following 4 conditions. Condition 1 would be the first phase of development shall be the construction of Holly Hill Lane, as I mentioned, from New Riverside Road to the development's entrance at Benton Hill Circle, to include connectivity to the Austin Park development to the north. Construction of the road will initially consist of sub-base and binder course, with the top coat to be added prior to final certificate of construction compliance. 2 is Holly Hill Lane shall serve as the only construction road for the development. 3 is the applicant shall update the master plan to show an asphalt path 8 feet in width within the Holly Hill Lane buffer, south side of, within the Holly Hill Lane right of way in the south side buffer. Beaufort County shall be responsible for the installation of the pathway. This is where we're asking that Beaufort County or that the developer actually build a section of that, section of that.
That's sort of kind of weird. That sounds like Beaufort County's going to pay for it.
And I'll let, I think there's been discussions that there'll be an opportunity for I think the applicant does ongoing discussions with the county, and he might be able to shed light on that tonight. Number 4 is the master plan is conceptual in nature, allowing for the applicant to work with town staff to save as many trees as practicable at time of development plan submittal. And I will open it up for questions for me or the applicant, or maybe is a public comment next? I don't know.
Well, anyone has questions for you before we move to the applicant, and then we'll do public comment.
Okay.
Anything for Dan?
Dan, just to clarify, just to make sure everybody in the room heard it and we all understand up here on commission, this is a planning commission recommendation to town council. So this goes to town council after tonight, no matter what.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, would the applicant like to speak?
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Dan Kiefer with Whitmer, Jones Kiefer, and we're here to answer any questions tonight. I got John Cardamone, and he's the owner, and Tim Butcher with Carolina Engineering as well. So we'll be on standby.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Kathleen, anything before I open up? Okay. Could we go ahead and start with public comment, please?
Bill Scampoli.
Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thanks. Bill Scampoli, 63 Rosewood Drive, Austin Park, Bluffton. Thank you for the chance to talk. My problem is, well, first, I'd like to emphasize we need to keep as many trees as possible, because they went scorched earth on phase 2A, B, and C. They ended up with 4 trees. That would be nice. My second problem is the building of Holly Hill Lane. As Commissioner Wellmore said, safety, safety, safety. You just opened up 50 backyards to outside people. We were sold wooded lots. Again, not your problem. but these people came to look at woods, and now what you're saying is half the county, Clarkenell and Griswold could drive down there, whatever they want to do. And I guess we're supposed to buy fences. I'm not quite sure, security cameras, lights. You just opened up to a passive park, which usually gets night visitors. And they come back not as nice as they do when they go in. So all these people, this is just a middle-class neighborhood working. We don't have cash buried in the yard for fences. Okay, so if for some reason this road has to be built without a park, should have a sound barrier, fences, something to protect these people. Also, why we need the road, I don't know. We need the road to get a passive park, but we don't need a turn lane because it's not going to get used much. Every other development on that road has a turn lane, but they're saying that there's not going to be enough traffic use for this road, so that we don't need a turn lane. What do we need the road for? Through people's backyards. Is there a BOGO on asphalt? Get 10 tons free when you buy 10 tons? I don't know. That road right now is unnecessary. There's no park, and unless there's something to help these people with their backyards, it causes more harm than good. And that's basically it. The trees, that, I'm forgetting something, but what am I gonna know? How much time do we left?
38 seconds.
Commissioners, thank you. Commissioner, thank you very much.
Thank you.
James Latchford.
I stood up to let him out.
My name is James Latchford, or Jim Latchford. I'm at 11 Grovewood Drive. And Dan, you did clarify something up for me. I was really concerned about the dwelling units because that gave an opportunity for townhouses and apartments. But you did say single, so that kind of let some of my air out. The road that's being built, I understand it's going to be a dirt road for the beginning of the whole concept. After that, Beaufort County is going to be putting some money towards this road. Is that road going to be taken care of Beaufort County, which means the police department can go in there and write tickets for speeders, even though it's a small section? And you talk about the gates that there could put in. Well, that would knock down your park, because then the people would not have access to your park. And I know that the old rule, you only needed one entrance in and out of the area, but now since we have the two guidelines, we will have two to get in and out. But if they put a gate at the one place, how are we going to get in and out? That nullifies us from using that section. So that needs to be addressed. As far as the traffic assessment, last one I got was back in January 25th, and I didn't see much on it. I want to know how that traffic, what time of day it was. Because, we have a school back there, and God forbid, those kids, they fly. And I know the Bluffton Police Department's been back there many times, and they've given tickets to the youngins. But as he was saying, there needs a turning lane if you're going to do it. I mean, it only takes 1 second for somebody to come. And I know there's been quite a few accidents on that road. And also, reaching back out, they're going to put sidewalks in there that we have to pay for out of our dues. We don't have sidewalks. Why is it going to be put on us for the total POA, which they have now, which will go back to the HOA? Why are we going to have to pay for their roads or their sidewalks? And now we have a gravel pathway, I guess, out to the street. These are things that have to be upgraded and have to be concerned about. Now, if they're willing to knock off Phase 1 and Phase 2 and make that a separate unit, that would be perfect. That would solve all the problems except for the people's backyards being filled with dirt and dust, and until they pave the road. The other thing I have is, I'm trying to make it as fast as, we've addressed speeding with the Bluffton Police Department, with also setting up with our POA, our HOA, and also with the Beaufort County Police Department. I think it stands there. We can't write tickets for speeding in our neighborhood. We can't do anything because it's a private road, and we need to work on that. But in the meantime, we have asked the declarant, which they call Austin Park, for speed bumps, and we've got no response for that in the neighborhood. So until we got me out.
That's it.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
I'm done.
Laura Markovich.
I thought it was a fire drill.
Good evening, Laura Markovich, 75 Grovewood Drive in Alston Park. Couple concerns. When I was in phase 2, I'm in the phase 2 section of Alston Park, and my backyard backs up against the woods as well, and we were told these were premium lots because of the woods. So our major concern with the developer is that they're going to bulldoze all those trees and leave us with a street to look at and, you know, other homes that weren't contracted for. So that's a major concern. Also, my neighbor brought up the fact that, you know, how is this going to affect the equity of our homes? You know, if we have a road behind us without any buffer, like true trees and woods behind us. So that's a main concern. I would like for the developer to explain what they're going to do between our backyards and the road and beyond the road, what that's going to look like, because, you know, if we bought our homes in good faith, knowing, you know, believing that we were going to have wooded space, which is why we paid for the upgrade to the premium, you know, to the lot. You know, I would like them to address what they're going to do for that. Like, you know, aesthetically, you know, I really don't want a road going in my backyard. You know, it's not exactly what I want. So I just don't know what they're going to do about that for the aesthetics and for the value of my house. That's all. Thank you.
Someone else, Carrie?
Mike Lucas.
Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing us to come up here and talk about this for a little bit.
May I have your name
My
and...
name is Mike Lucas, and I live at 57 Gatewood Lane in The Haven. The Haven is a unique area. I find it unique in that virtually the entire border of The Haven is a forest. It's a tree line. It's around there. But the residents on Rolling River, Blackstone River, Abbotsbury, and Bay Bridge, they side up to this development. And the concerns that are there with many of my friends there is that they, for 12, 15 years, they have had quiet enjoyment of their property with the woods back there. And I see in the model how you have the, we'll say, buffer zone. We would like, and I believe everybody would like to have you give serious consideration to what they have already had for 12, 15 years now. And I want to make sure that when the developer comes in to bulldoze that area, that they take care of full consideration of the trees that are along the border there. It has been habitual for developers in this area to clear cut everything. And you know the examples, I won't go through all that. But that has been the way it's been. We want better consideration for this area this time around. We rely upon you to see to it that that happens. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gary Knuckles.
Thank you. My name is Gary Knuckles. I live at 87 Grovewood Drive, Alston Park. And our primary concern is, one, like the previous speaker mentioned, we were told these were premium lots and that we would have the wooded buffer area between the next phase being developed and ours. And now we find we don't have that. unless there might be some strip of trees. But our house is now going to be sandwiched between two-lane roads, Holly Hill Lane and Grovewood. We're the only houses in between those two roads, and our property values are going to plummet with that. I mean, I don't know how anybody could say that they're not. And just the traffic alone, I know there's been a traffic assessment, 76 houses, minimum 120 cars in the morning, cars, trucks, whatever, going in and out of there to work. Same thing coming in the evening. And the noise with all those trees, and they address the point that the trees themselves, yes, they clear cut them all to make the lots, to prep them. And then I was told that, well, yeah, but we'll plant new trees. Well, new trees aren't the trees that are there that are already 40 feet tall. Not by any stretch of the imagination. And I know my life expectancy, whatever they put in there, is not going to reach that. And that's a huge impact, particularly when we sit on our screen porch and face what is now going to be Holly Hill Road, and sit out there and watch the woodpeckers, mockingbirds, you name it, and not to mention the hummingbirds that we have come in our backyard to the feeders. The aesthetics, it's going to be horrible. That's about all I can say. And how wide is the actual road going to be, Holly Hill?
We'll address that after public comment. We'll address that after public comment.
We're not allowed to have.
We're not allowed to have interaction.
You're not allowed to have interaction. Okay, because I have that question. Exactly how far from my fence line is the curb going to be? Because I believe in the previous one, he said it was 24 feet wide. But where does that go from my fence line at 87 Grovewood Drive to that curb? And are they just putting grass with a couple shrubs for greenhouse? These are some major questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Dot.
Hi, my name is Mary Dacca. I live at 33 Benton Circle in Alston Park. I understand the concern that these folks have that are on Grovewood, no doubt. One of my concerns came up at an earlier meeting where the builder talked about the gated part of this, and yet these 67 houses that are going to go in there, they're still part of Alston Park. Why, my question would be, why does that section need to be gated away from the rest of Alston Park, but yet they're supposed to be able to use our pool, our gym? They can come out, but we can't go in. I don't see the purpose of gating that one section of what is supposed to be a total development. The fact that they are now talking about Holly Hill Lane being paved, that fills one of my problems from before, because they were talking about that being gravel and emergency access only at one point. And we need, if we're adding this many more houses, we need 2 accesses at least. If there was an emergency situation and they decided to evacuate the subdivision, one road going out of that for that many houses is ridiculous. You wouldn't get everybody out in a timely manner if there was a true emergency. So, but it seems like they could take that Holly Hill Lane and maybe move it straight out from where they're saying Street A should be, go straight out that way and just do away with Holly Hill Lane altogether. Like I said, my concern is this whole gated thing. I've lived in a gated community before, and that causes other issues that are, haven't even been addressed.
Thank you. I jumped on that one.
Every time.
Do we have anyone else? Okay. That is the end of public comment. Dan, would y'all like to come up and address some of the issues that you might have heard? There was a lot of questions about the buffering between the backside of those existing residences and then the Holly Hill Lane, and then maybe perhaps, Dan, if you can explain the Holly Hill Lane a little better with that park that Beaufort County, like the reason why things are where they are.
Go ahead, Mel. Fill in whatever.
I'll start with the gates. That was, so the gates are an option, like we said. And those are internal, so that wouldn't affect any. Can I move the cursor? Okay. So Holly Hill Lane will remain open. That will be the county, access road, county park access road. The gate, there'll be a gate.
There's nothing you can do about Holly Hill Lane. That's a Beaufort County.
Yeah, that's a right-of-way that's owned by New Riverside, Palmer Bluff, and the road was part of that original New Riverside PUD. Am I saying that correct?
And it's the access for the passive park.
It's access to the passive park. So our property, that's outside of our property limits. So the gate would be one at call it the eastern entrance and one at the western entrance. And the idea would be those would be open during the day, closed at night. It's more.
Kind of like Westbury Park was supposed to be when the gates were.
Yeah. So it's similar to that. And as far as Holly Hill Lane, that's like I said, that's existing right of way, 60-foot wide right of way. It'll have a 20-foot, plus or minus 20-foot, 22-foot wide road. 22, and then it'll have drainage along the sides of the roads and the pathway, and then the existing buffers that are to the north, and then the buffer that's proposed to the south.
Just because we have people that don't do this every day, can you give us an estimate of distance from the back of those properties to Holly Hill Lane? Is that about 50 feet or?
So you have the back of the property line. Then you have 20-foot buffer.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The 20-foot buffer?
On both sides? Mr. Marcus, I got from my backyard of 5 feet.
We don't talk back and forth.
I'm sorry. It's that distance.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to double check on my plan. So Dan and I were looking at this earlier today. It's 20-foot. Up top one. Okay, if you want to zoom into that, Dan? Okay, this shows it pretty well, actually. So this is the property line right here. And the red dot is on the 20-foot buffer. So that'll be untouched. Then you have the right-of-way line and then the road.
So the right-of-way line is approximately, what'd you say, 20? Is that another 20 feet?
20, yeah.
So
It's a 50-foot right-of-way, correct?
60 foot.
60 foot? So that line is 30 feet from the center of the road.
Correct. Yeah, and then a 20-foot buffer.
And so nothing is disturbed in those areas?
I don't know, no.
In the right-of-way or in the, presumably the buffer's untouched, but is the rest of the right-of-way that's not part of the street and path going
Anything happening in between that?
Yeah, that'll be the road and then the drainage and the sidewalk on one side, the trail.
So are there any, because I don't know, trees in that area currently?
There are trees, pine trees.
Will the majority of them stay or go in the, not the buffer, but the other,
In the right of way.
in the right of way?
Yes.
They'll have to go for drainage and such.
Yeah.
I'm just
Like I
trying to
said,
make it
that's
clear.
outside of our property. That road was
Right.
previously approved for.
Okay. I'm just trying to make it clear so everybody understands what each line means. And so the reason why you have to do the improvement to Holly Hill Lane is because you have this development. Otherwise, Beaufort County eventually would have done it. It's just y'all got there
Yeah,
first.
I guess the better way to say it is the road, for these lots to be occupied and built, the road has to be built.
Right.
How it gets built is,
But if you weren't here yet, then Beaufort County eventually in the future may have gotten there first with a road.
correct,
So no matter what, a road was going to go through
correct.
from the beginning. Like it didn't just happen.
Right, and the county would only, I think it's called out in the agreement as they would only be required to put in a gravel road. So this was one up for the gravel road, at least for half of it.
Okay. So this master plan for this piece, was that in the overall, or is that, this is a third part that came later, or how to explain that, the different phase of Austin Park?
So my understanding is phase 3, it was part of the initial, not plan, but part of the covenants and restrictions and part of the original parcel. There was never an IMP developed for phase 3. That's really the IMP was the only thing that wasn't.
But the boundaries were
The
always
boundaries
there.
and the density.
The boundaries and density have always been there. The Holly Hill Lane has always been there.
Yes,
So none of that's changed. So you're working within your boundaries.
correct. Yeah.
So if I could, because you brought up density, I just want to make clear, and I'm asking this question of staff, if I could. This property has been assigned way back when, 76 units by right, the developer can put in there.
That's correct.
We're just looking at the plan of that. And historically, not to tear up any old wounds for anybody in the room, but the developer came and asked to change that to 300 or 400 lots, and that did not happen.
Right.
And this is back to the original 76, which he already has.
Right.
That's
So
correct.
we're not looking at adding or subtracting any on that.
That's correct. When they were trying to come in with more density, we went to negotiating committee because it was something that had to work out at the town level. What they have
Dan, you
here,
want to speak into that?
what they have these. They have these residential credits for the 76. When there was something coming in previous, I wasn't here with the town at the time. My understanding was it went to negotiating committee and it never came to fruition for the request. Richardson might help with that.
May I?
Yes. Please give us some legal clarification.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. As always, I follow the rules. So, for the record, my name is Richardson LaBruce. I'm with Finger Melnick, Brooks and LaBruce on Hilton Head, and we are here to serve as legal counsel for the Planning Commission. Because of the nature of this and these types of applications are a little bit unusual, I hope you don't mind if I give a little bit of background on what y'all are doing and why your flexibility is somewhat limited. So for the members of the audience and people watching, this is part of the new Riverside Development Agreement. The development agreements are allowed under South Carolina law. Local governments can enter into them. And they essentially set into place the zoning restrictions at a specific time so that you have very limited flexibility and chance to amend those down the line. So when New Riverside was brought in, there was a certain amount of density that was allocated to the entire community, all of New Riverside, from residential density to commercial density. What's called a concept plan is generally set out and would set almost in large blocks. Now, here's the Haven in New Riverside. Here's what's going to be Austin Park. Here's the road and the traffic network. But individual lots and individual developments aren't really fleshed out at that point. as each community comes into line and starts to begin that development process, what you have is an initial master plan. And this initial master plan is designed to give a little bit more form to these communities. And what is permitted by the initial master plan is going to be set by that development agreement and the zoning standards that were adopted. So for instance, with Alston Park and the way the New Riverside works is there's this flexible ability with residential density where you can assign density to different properties. So the idea is you can kind of consolidate density in certain properties if you would like to, or that you can have communities that are less dense, larger lots. It's kind of how you could build a condominium complex on a smaller piece of property and fit 350 units on it versus a larger piece of property with larger lots. So at this point, with the density, you have the 72 units that they are assigned, and they have that by right. They have the right to develop 72 units on their property, provided that they meet all the other zoning restrictions. With Holly Hill Lane, obviously that is something that was set into motion years and years and years ago as part of the development agreement's requirement that the passive park be donated to Beaufort County, and that road network and that access to that passive park be accommodated. If I can, there is some public comment, and I know this is tough for Planning Commission because Planning Commission, they're volunteer members of the community that are appointed by town council that are obviously passionate about these issues. That's why they're here as late as they are so many times a month. But there are certain legal constraints that kind of tie their hands in what they're able to do. So some of the comments that deal with the relationship between Alston Parks Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3, a lot of that's going to be set out in declarations of covenants that are between the parties, the property owners. Those are contracts between the people who live in Alston Park Phase 1 and 2 and then the developer and the association. Those are things that are largely outside the purview of the Planning Commission. How you deal with how one neighborhood, how they react with their neighbors or how they respond. And we've talked about this before, that we don't have the ability to condition approvals on, you can't delegate that right to third parties. You can't tell a developer that, well, you have to get the approvals of your next door neighbors to be able to get those. That's just under South Carolina law, it can't be done. That's not meant to diminish or minimize in any way the concerns that were stated. I think they're valid and reasonable, and I think it's certainly something that needs to be discussed. But this may not be the forum. So the other issue is with Holly Hill Lane and its development. That's going to be set by Beaufort County standards. I know I've tried to cover a lot very quickly, but Madam Chair, members of the commission, is there anything that I can address that was particularly brought up by public comment, by the applicant, or by staff?
Yeah, we don't have any, I mean, we aren't, I know that everybody has a concern with their POA or whoever sold you your property, but that's not something that we have any purview over. It's unfortunate, but we can't roll over that.
No, and that's outside of what a planning commission's statutorily defined duties are.
Yeah.
That's a private matter with whoever sold the lot and the purchaser.
Right.
Well, as long as you're up there, Richardson, one of the things that I wanted to address is I think we should make a requirement of this, that pathway come along the south side of Holly Hill Lane all the way to the main entrance of the community, which is Benton Circle. Are we within the legal purview to do that? I don't care. I mean, the developer's saying the county should pay for it. The county, I don't know if they will or not. I don't care who pays for it, but I think it needs to be a requirement of this, not internal to the community along Holly Hill on the south side. This Benton Circle, yes.
I think
I mean, we're recommending to town council, so I think it's reasonable to be able to do. I just wanted to check from a legal perspective if you had.
Yeah, I think it is because of the interconnectivity requirements in the new Riverside PUD and the new Riverside Development Agreement. Certainly requiring that those pathways that would be an essential part of this development be built in conjunction with the roadway that's being constructed, that would make perfect sense.
Well, and to me, commissioners, to me, it makes sense to make it a suggested requirement to council that it be along the south side out of consideration to the neighbors who live on the north side already. So, so the new people that move in, they know what they're getting. They're getting a pathway. And we're not slapping it up against the back property line of the people across the street.
I agree.
Absolutely, and I think that's a reasonable request given the public comment that we've heard tonight.
Thank you.
And then there was another public comment about traffic in that turn lane, and when was this traffic study, and how did they determine?
There was an initial traffic analysis for all of the Riverside, but with this application, there was a similar traffic impact analysis based on the trips being generated here. That was in your packet, very recent, within months. And the recommendation that came out of it was, let me see if I can. There's actually 2 southbound lanes on New Riverside Road right now. So there was not a recommendation to create a dedicated right turn lane going on to Holly Hill Lane. And the idea is that anybody that's slowing down to make that turn on the Holly Hill Lane, drivers behind them can switch lanes and go past them. I see it as something that's very standard in traffic impact analysis.
A different situation like at midpoint, for instance, because it's a 2-lane.
Right, it pinches down at that point.
Right. Okay.
And there's a school there.
Well, and there's a school there, but I'm just trying to give an example.
Yeah.
Richardson, just one other question. I know in our own community, the developer, when he had backyards backing up to a road, ended up putting up a wooden fence of sort of barrier. Is that beyond our purview also?
But that's not on this property.
I understand, but again, it's the developer, and, could that be a request that we make of the developer for consideration?
So those sorts of requests have been made a number of times and have been honored a number of times because of similar concerns. I know that if I recall correctly, there's a community here in Old Town that was recently constructed, and there was concern about the development in that community and how it would impact an adjacent one. And agreements were reached so that a lot of those concerns were, minimized. They weren't completely eradicated, but they did whatever they could to kind of ease those neighbors' tensions over the community. It certainly would make sense in this case where, at the initial master plan level, it may be a little detailed to add exactly what needs to be there. But this is only one part. The next part will be a development plan that they will have to get approved. And I would imagine many of these same concerns would be raised, and oftentimes you have a little bit more flexibility in dictating what's done with those properties during the development plan. That's kind of the long answer. The short answer is I certainly think that you can include it within your recommendations to town council. And I think it would certainly be wise of the developer to strongly consider adding that prior to going to town council, or at least being ready to commit to that when they go to town council.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is probably a question for Dan. And the Holly Hill Lane, after it's constructed, who's responsible for maintenance? Is that Beaufort County that will be responsible for maintenance of that road?
So Palmetto Bluff owns the road, and
Crescent Resources.
Okay, so, okay. All right.
South Street.
Yeah. I think one thing that might be helpful for the gentleman, Mr. Lucas from the Haven, I think it would be helpful to just address his concern about the clearing of trees or the clearing of what appears to be buffer adjacent to the Haven, which is, as you know, primarily wetlands and a wetland buffer. But can you speak to what the applicant can and cannot do with that wetland and the wetland buffer?
Well, they are proposing with this master plan, they've got rain gardens in here. But when you look at the closest residential homes in the Haven, it's from their backyard lot, it's about 80 feet to the property line that they share with Alston. At Alston Park Phase 3. Alston Park Phase 3 has another additional 145 feet before they hit their first residential lot. So from residential lot to residential lot between the two developments is 225 feet, and that's at the closest. The rest of them get further, 300 plus feet. So it's a good distance. We won't know until final development plan comes in on exactly what tree saves that are going to happen. One thing we're going to ask the developer to do is to shift it. This isn't specific to your request, but we're going to have them shift a few lots here and have this opening relocated over here, and it'll save some trees that are shown in the tree plan.
Thank you. I'm glad you did that. Can they clear the wetland or the wetland buffer? Can the developer do that? Anywhere where it shows wetland and wetland buffer, can the developer clear
I don't
any of
think
that?
they're proposing to do that.
I don't see that either.
I'm just making sure so that everyone understands what can or can't be done
Right,
with wetlands.
and I don't know whether they can fill inside the wetland. I don't know what the wetland is there. I mean,
In order for them,
There'll be no disturbance between the wetland or buffer.
I'm sorry, say that.
No disturbance.
No disturbance to the wetland or the wetland buffer.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard.
So I heard murmurs in the back about the covenants. There are wetland covenants throughout New Riverside. I'm not certain as to what percentage of these wetlands are delineated in those covenants, but I would presume it's a substantial portion of it. Also, anytime that you're disturbing wetlands, it's a process that you can't just go out there and clear cut them or fill them. There's a process that you have to go through with some state regulatory agencies as well as through the town. So
They would have, in order to do that, they would have to come back before us, correct? If they wanted to take out a wetland and do any development on
if they
that.
wanted to show any development in the wetland that's not shown on this master plan, and which is none at the moment, then yes, they would need to come and get an amendment of that master plan, which would require they come through you and then go back to town council.
And in addition to the regulatory agency that would have to also approve it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The process for this, so we do the recommendation from here. It goes to town council. Regardless of our recommendation, let's just make an assumption here. Town council approves this master plan. When it comes back up for development, does it go through staff and then come to us, or does it just go through staff? It just goes through staff. And DRC.
Right.
Which is, yes.
And you have the opportunity as a planning commission to provide
I just was
comments
curious if
at
it
that
came
time.
back here.
It does not come back to the planning commission because it's a residential development in New Riverside.
Yeah.
Another legal question. Would it be allowed to make a recommendation to add a fence at the property line of Holly Hill Lane where it abuts up to those adjacent property owners? Or offer that
That's what he
to-
was saying.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's the recommendation he was asking about
Okay,
adding.
never mind, I take it back.
And I think you said
Yes.
we can make that a suggestion
Yeah.
for the developer to consider.
I think so, and I think give town council the ability, because it's, town council has a little bit more flexibility than the planning commission does, but give town council that as an option that they want to consider.
Thank you.
I think that and the pathway are the two.
Okay. If we don't have anything else that we have questions or discussion on, then does anyone want to go ahead and make a motion?
Oh, one more comment I wanted to make, because there was a comment about the time period on the traffic assessment. I think the gentleman who was that was looking at that, I think that was Mr. Latchford. I'm sorry if I said that. Just in case you do go back and look at the Kimley Horn report, it starts detailing out, probably it's on attachment 4, it's page 229 of our total package, but a few pages into the report, it does detail out when they looked at those peak times. So they give you a time reference in there in case you wanted to know when they were doing counts.
Thank you.
And the report dated February 8th of 2023.
And the analysis was done, the traffic counts were done on January 10th of this year.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Based off I try to predict what y'all are going to do so I can help out. But if you look at town staff recommendation number 3, the applicant shall update the master plan to show an asphalt pathway 8 feet in width within the Holly Hill Lane buffer. Based off of Mr. Wetmore's comments, I presume you want to include a reference to that being on the southern side of Holly Hill Lane?
And circle, yes.
Yes. Okay. And then Beaufort County shall be responsible for we don't need to add that because it does sound a bit confusing.
I don't think we need to worry about who pays for it. We just need to.
Agree. And then the first phase of development shall be the construction of Holly Hill Lane. I think you can either add a separate recommendation as a number 5, or perhaps put in Mr. Delcore's recommendation regarding the fence into recommendation number 1.
I think he should make the motion because he wants the fence.
All right. I move that we recommend to town council for the Alston Park Phase 3 initial master plan with the 4 conditions that staff has identified, with the additions that we would like to have the path be on the south side of Holly Hill, and we'd like to have the developer consider a barrier or fence of some sort backing up to the lots that are on the north side of Holly Hill Lane.
And before we get a second, just so I can make sure, and a removal of the Beaufort County shall be responsible for the installation of the pathway.
I accept that Beaufort County, we are going to remove that sentence that Beaufort County shall be responsible for the installation of the pathway.
And clarify that the pathway goes to Benton Circle, if you don't mind.
And
Even though we're not supposed to be talking right now.
And the pathway is going to the circle, Benton Circle.
Yes.
All right, so
We're in the middle of the motion, so
we are in the middle of the motion. So if I may, Madam Chair, if I may restate that so that we can make sure that the second is.
Thank you.
So this is approval with conditions of Alston Park Phase 3 initial master plan. Commissioner Delcore has made a motion to approve with the conditions as stated in the staff reports 1, 2, 3, and 4, subject to the following revisions: that as to number 1, that the developer work with, or that the developer consider a buffer or fence along the north side of the property to provide screening for the property owners in Alston Park Phase 1 or 2. And then as to number 3, the removal of Beaufort County shall be responsible for the installation of the pathway, with the addition of a requirement that the asphalt pathway in the Holly Hill Lane buffer be on the south side of Holly Lane and run all the way to Bennett Circle.
do I have a second? Do I have any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Please show up to town council.
Sorry, we can't really do much about the developer agreements. Okay. Do we have any further discussion?
Folks, we're still in the middle.
We're still in the middle of our meeting, please.
We'll be done in about 30.
Staff or commissioners, okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.